In this video, we're going to look at firstly briefly recapping some basic word processing that you will require if you're doing a mail merge question in your Functional Skills ICT exams, but mostly we're going to be looking at completing the mail merge process. So we're going to be looking at how we allocate our data source, how we filter down our data, inserting that data into our document, and then preparing the document to finish the merge. Now, in terms of all this merging that we're talking about, mail merge we use to automatically insert data into a document. So it might be, for example, that we have a large amount of addresses and personal details that we want to put into a letter template that if we were to type out manually would take a long time. And so what we're doing is we're producing multiple unique copies of a document. So it might be, for example, that we've got 20-30 people that we want to send a letter to, and it will produce 20-30 copies of that letter with their addresses automatically put in. It's basically automating our document production, so rather than me or someone else having to sit there and type out 20 or 30 different addresses, it takes that process and automates it and does it for you using a set of data. So this might be a spreadsheet you've made, an Access database or something like that. However, in this video, we're going to be using Microsoft Word 2016, so other softwares, whilst they have their own versions of mail merge, might differ a little bit from this. So OpenOffice, for example, I know it's different on Macs sometimes and things like that, so just bear that in mind if you are trying to follow this video either for your own revision or for your Functional Skills ICT exam. Right, so for demonstrating the mail merge process, what we're going to do is we're going to go through the entire process, looking at how we would do it with a simple filter. So by simple filter, I mean we've got some simple criteria that's one of like a limited data set, and how we'd implement that and go through doing that in a mail merge. And we're then going to look after just specifically at what we do if we had a complex filter, because the rest of the process would remain the same. So in a Functional Skills ICT exam, you'll get given all of your data for level 2 as raw text files. So rather than having like spreadsheets given to you and Word documents given to you, you'll get some raw data like so. We need to, depending on the question, depending on the software, put that into the relevant piece of software. And in this case, that's nice and easy because we're just going to copy and paste the contents of our document into a blank Word document ready for us to manipulate it and do our mail merging tasks. Any sort of standard word processing or any pictures, any format or anything like that we need to do before we do our mail merge process, because that's going to produce copies of the document we've got here for each set of data that we merge in. So say we've got 20 letters and we've then got to go put the logo in 20 times or a table in 20 times. It's just a lot of effort. So we're going to take our copy and pasted text file, format it up, make sure it fits on a page and it's all nice and neat. And we're then going to do all the rest of our word processing first. So it might be, for example, that I've got a logo to put in. So we'll take our logo and put it into the document. I like to put those in the header when I'm doing a mail merge task, just because it keeps it out of the way and it stops it interrupting any of your data, any of your documents sort of overlapping anything, because you'll lose marks in the exam if any of your content is obstructed by anything that you've put in. You might also have some tables to produce. So I've been lazy and I've blue petered it and had one I've prepared earlier. And that's taking me onto 2 pages, so I'm just going to neaten up my formatting a little bit, take out some of the big gaps that you always get when you copy and paste in a text file, and then we're ready to go. So the mail merge process, once you've done all your formatting, is all on the Mailings tab at the top of Microsoft Word. And there's 3 things that we need to do. We need to attach our data so the document knows where it's looking for this content. From there, we need to filter that data down, so we need to make sure we're only sending it to the people that we need to send it to. And then we're going to put that data into the document, because there's no point having the data attached and filtering it down if we can't see any of it. So our first step was attaching our data. So we're going to select our recipients and we're going to use an existing list. From like a realistic doing this at work point of view, your data is going to come from somewhere. You're going to have that set up already, so you're not going to be typing it in just randomly. Similarly, we are in an exam going to be using something we've made previously most of the time, so it'll be a spreadsheet you've made or a database you've made, and that will form the basis of your mail merge task. On rare occasions they might give you some pre-prepared data, but for the most part it's going to be something you've made. Here I've got some data I've set up, and when you choose your data, one of 2 things you want to happen. Either nothing pops up and it just carries on as normal, or if something does pop up like so, we want to press OK, and then nothing happens. If loads of stuff starts popping up now, what you've probably done is chosen the text file that we copied and pasted in. which everyone does at least some point because it says letter on it or something like that. Just if that happens, keep pressing OK until it stops coming up with dialog boxes, and repeat that process with the correct file. We pressed OK, nothing happened, that's what we want. So that data is now attached to this document, ready to use. Step 2 was we wanted to filter it down. Now I mentioned we're going to be looking at a simple filter in this first run through, and to show you what I mean, we're going to press Edit Recipient List, which is how we're going to filter our data. If I stretch this out just so we can see it full screen, this is all of the data that we've attached to our document, and we can see we've got our names and addresses and things like that. I'm running out of battery. Now doing that is going to attach all of this data, and we're going to want to filter this down to only show certain people. Now we could go through and untick them all, but that sounds a lot like hard work. So what we're going to look at doing is filtering it down. We only want to send this particular example to people with a red account type. So we know account type is what we want to filter it by. Every field has a little arrow on it, and if there's an option for a simple filter, the options will appear here. This will only happen if you've got limited examples of data within that set. So here we've only got the colours of the rainbow. For city, for example, we've got loads, so it doesn't come up. Again, if you're working with numbers as well, that won't pop up. In this case, it does this, so we can choose red, like so. Press OK, and then all we've got to do is highlight the data we want to replace, whether that's our address or other bits within the document. Choose the bottom half of our Insert Merge Field button, and replace each instance of data with its equivalent out of that list. Now, when you do that, it does have a habit of taking out line breaks and spacing. So as you can see, as I'm going through, I'm just preserving my formatting. So I'm just knocking down any line breaks that get taken out, reinserting any spacing that gets removed and things like that. You can see I've been really precise with it. That won't happen. But if you're just dragging it really quickly like so, you might catch the line break and it remove it. But it's not the end of the world just to press enter if we have to. So as I go through the document, I'll replace each of those like so. And that is our mail merge. Now if I press preview results and I use these arrows to scroll through, we can see it's going to produce a copy of each of those sets of data into our letter, and rather than having to type it out 14 times in this instance, it's just going to generate this 14 times for us. To make it generate it, we're going to go on finish and merge and print documents, and we can either leave it on all to print them all out, or if say it wants the first 3, we can go from 1 to 3 or from 1 to 5, whatever it may be. So previously we looked at what we would deal with in terms of completing a mail merge task using a simple filter. But let's say, for example, I've got something a bit more complex I need to use. So let's say I've got to work with numbers, or if I've got a more complex and more varied data sets instead of just the colours of the rainbow. I've got all the cities in England, for example. We're not going to have the option of a simple filter, so we're going to have to use the slightly more complicated way of doing it. It's still not that bad, it's still pretty simple, but it's just something we need to bear with. So let's say I repeat most of my process, so I take my letter, I copy and paste it into my Word document, get it all ready. I'm not going to put the pictures in that app, but you've done all your word processing and stuff like that. And so we follow through the similar sort of process. So I've got mailings, select recipient and use an existing list, and attach my data just as I did before, except for this time I've not got such a simplistic set of data. So when I go to edit my recipient list, let's say for example I wanted to only send it to people with a credit balance of more than £60. So we've got a credit balance field here, but because we're dealing with numbers, when I hit my arrow, there isn't an option for that simple filter. Similarly, let's say I was doing it by city. In this instance, because there's so many, again, there's not that simple filter. Any instance where this happens, we're just going to use this filter button at the bottom, and we're going to assemble our filter manually rather than having the document do it for us, which is what happens when we use that arrow that we were using earlier. So if I use the first example, let's say I want the credit balance, so I choose credit balance to be greater than 60. And we'll just assemble it like so. If we're using words, we'd obviously have to use equal to, because we can't use, for example, if we're using city equal to Derby, we couldn't have city greater than Derby because that wouldn't make sense. So we just assemble it however we need to, and then we can press OK. And it will do the same thing and hide any that do not meet our criteria. So the rest of the process stays the same. The only difference is if we have a complex filter, we just have to assemble it manually like so. Being confident with mail merge is super important for your Functional Skills ICT Level 2 exam, because whilst Excel is the most common element with the City and Guilds exam that we use at Learning Unlimited Derby, mail merge is probably a close second. And in terms of using it, if you're looking at this as a revision purpose or from a real world perspective of using this in your workplace, then that filter could be useful if you're dealing with financial figures before you're sending out documents. If you've got quite a varied set of data, you'll need that secondary method of filtering that we just looked at in order to be able to process this further.